Christmas Dinner, from Sketches by Boz, by Charles Dickens.
Christmas time. That man must be a misanthrope indeed, in whose breast something like a jovial feeling is not roused,
in whose mind some pleasant associations are not awakened,
by the recurrence of Christmas. There are people who will tell you that
Christmas is not to them what it used to be.
That each succeeding Christmas has found some cherished hope or happy prospect of the year before dimmed or passed away.
That the present only serves to remind them of reduced circumstances and straitened incomes.
Of the feasts they once bestowed on hollow friends, and of the cold looks that meet them now in adversity and misfortune.
Never heed such dismal reminiscences. There are few men who have lived long enough in the world who cannot call up such thoughts any day in the year. Then do not select the merriest of the 365 for your doleful recollections, but draw your chair nearer the blazing fire, fill the glass and send round the song.
And if your room be smaller than it was a dozen years ago, or if your glass be filled with reeking punch instead of sparkling wine, put a good face on the matter, empty it offhand, fill another, and thank God it's no worse.
Look on the merry faces of your children,
If you have any.
as they sit round the fire.
One little seat may be empty. One slight form that gladdened the father's heart and roused the mother's pride to look upon may not be there.
Dwell not upon the past.
reflect upon your present blessings, of which every man has many, not on your past misfortunes, of which all men have some. Fill your glass again, and with a merry face and contented heart.
Who can be insensible to the outpourings of good feeling which abound at this season of the year?
A Christmas family party. We know nothing in nature more delightful. There seems a magic in the very name of Christmas.
Petty jealousies and discords are forgotten. Social feelings are awakened in bosoms to which they have long been strangers.
Kindly hearts that have yearned towards each other are again reunited, and all is kindness and benevolence.
The Christmas family party that we mean is not a mere assemblance of relations got up at a week or two's notice, originating this year, having no family precedent in the last, and not likely to be repeated in the next.
No, it is an annual gathering of all the accessible members of the family, young or old, rich or poor, and all the children look forward to it for 2 months beforehand in a fever of anticipation.
Formerly, it was held at Grandpapa's, but Grandpapa getting old,
And Grandmamma getting old too.
they have given up housekeeping and domesticated themselves with...
Uncle George. So the party always takes place at Uncle George's house.
But Grandmamma sends in most of the good things.
And Grandpapa always will toddle down all the way to Newgate Market to buy the turkey.
Which he engages a porter to bring home behind him in triumph.
Always insisting on the man's being rewarded with a glass of spirits over and above his hire.
Oh, thank you very much, sir.
Drink a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to Aunt George.
As to Grandmamma, she is very secret and mysterious for 2 or 3 days beforehand, but not sufficiently so to prevent rumours getting afloat that she has purchased a beautiful new cap with pink ribbons for each of the servants, together with sundry penknives and pencil cases for the younger branches.
To say nothing of divers secret additions to the order originally given by Aunt George at the pastry cook's, such as another dozen of mince pies for the dinner and a large plum cake for the children.
On Christmas Eve, Grandmamma is always in excellent spirits, and after employing all the children during the day in stoning the plums, insists regularly every year
On Uncle George coming down into the kitchen, taking off his coat and stirring the pudding for half an hour or so, which Uncle George good-humouredly does to the vociferous delight of the children and servants.
The evening concludes with a glorious game of blind man's buff, in an early stage of which Grandpapa takes great care to be caught, in order that he may have an opportunity of displaying his dexterity.
On the following morning, the old couple, with as many of the children as the pew will hold, go to church in great state,
leaving Aunt George at home dusting decanters.
And Uncle George carrying bottles into the dining parlour and calling for corkscrews and getting into everybody's way.
When the church party return to lunch, Grandpapa produces a small sprig of mistletoe from his pocket and tempts the boys to kiss their little cousins under it.
A proceeding which affords both the boys and the old gentleman unlimited satisfaction.
but which rather outrages Grandmamma's ideas of decorum.
Until Grandpapa says that when he was just 13 years and 3 months old, he kissed Grandmamma under a mistletoe too, on which the children clap their hands and laugh very heartily.
As do Aunt George.
And Uncle George.
And Grandmamma looks pleased and says, with a benevolent smile, that Grandpapa was an impudent young dog, on which the children laugh very heartily again.
And Grandpapa more heartily than any of them.
But all of these diversions are nothing to the subsequent excitement when Grandmamma
In a high cap and slate-coloured silk gown,
and Grandpapa
With a beautifully plaited shirt frill and white neckerchief,
seat themselves on one side of the drawing-room fire, with children and innumerable little cousins seated in the front, awaiting the arrival of the expected visitors.
Suddenly, a hackney coach is heard to stop, and Uncle George, who has been looking out of the window, exclaims,
Here's Jane.
on which children rush to the door and helter-skelter downstairs. And Uncle Robert and Aunt Jane and the dear little baby and the nurse are ushered upstairs, tumultuous shouts of
Oh, my!
from the children and frequently repeated warnings
Not to hurt baby.
from the nurse.
and Grandpapa takes the child.
and Grandmamma kisses her daughter.
And the confusion of this first entry has scarcely subsided when some other aunts and uncles with more cousins arrive. And the grown-up cousins flirt with each other, and so do the little cousins too, for that matter, and nothing is to be heard but a confused din of talking, laughing, and merriment.
A hesitating double knock at the street door, heard during a momentary pause in the conversation, excites a general inquiry of
Who's that?
and 2 or 3 children who have been standing at the window announce in a low voice that it's
Upon which Aunt George leaves the room to welcome the newcomer.
And Grandmamma draws herself up, rather stiff and stately, for Margaret married a poor man without her consent, and has been discarded by her friends, and debarred the society of her dearest relatives.
But Christmas has come round, and the unkind feelings have melted away before its genial influence, like half-formed ice beneath the morning sun.
the air of conscious rectitude and cold forgiveness which the old lady has assumed sits ill upon her.
And the poor girl is led in by her sister, pale in looks and broken in hope.
A momentary pause succeeds. The girl breaks suddenly from her sister and throws herself, sobbing, on her mother's neck.
The father steps hastily forward and takes her husband's hand.
Friends crowd round to offer their hearty congratulations, and happiness and harmony again prevail.
Oh, so lovely to see you.
As to the dinner, it's perfectly delightful. Nothing goes wrong, and everybody is in the very best of spirits and disposed to please and be pleased.
Grandpapa relates a circumstantial account of the purchase of the turkey, with a slight digression relative to the purchase of previous turkeys on former Christmas Day.
Which Grandmamma corroborates in the minutest particular.
Uncle George tells stories and carves poultry and takes wine and jokes with the children at the side table and winks at the cousin and exhilarates everybody with his good humour and hospitality.
And when at last a stout servant staggers in with a gigantic pudding with a sprig of holly on the top, there is such a laughing and shouting and clapping of little chubby hands and kicking up of fat dumpy legs as can only be equalled by the applause with which the astonishing feat of pouring lighted brandy into mince pies is received by the younger visitors.
And then the dessert.
And the wine.
And the fun.
Such beautiful speeches and such songs from Aunt Margaret's husband, who turns out to be such a nice man.
Oh, and so attentive to Grandmamma.
Even Grandpapa not only sings his annual song with unprecedented vigour, but on being honoured with a unanimous
According to annual custom.
actually comes out with a new one.
Which nobody but Grandmamma ever heard before.
And a young scapegrace of a cousin who has been in some disgrace with the old people for certain heinous sins of omission and commission.
Neglecting to call and persisting in drinking Burton ale.
Astonishes everybody into convulsions of laughter by volunteering the most extraordinary comic songs that ever were heard.
And thus the evening passes in a strain of rational goodwill and cheerfulness.
Doing more to awaken the sympathies of every member of the party on behalf of his neighbour and to perpetuate their good feeling during the ensuing year than half the homilies that have ever been written by half the divines that have ever lived.
Christmas bells are sweetly ringing, joy to the happy sons of men. Children's voices gladly singing, praise to their God and Saviour. Merry, Merry Christmas, Merry, Merry Christmas, joy and pleasure without measure. Merry, Merry Christmas, Merry, Merry Christmas, hail the happy day. Merry, Merry Christmas, Merry, Merry Christmas, joy and pleasure without measure. Merry, Merry Christmas, Merry, Merry Christmas, hail the happy day. Shepherds heard the wondrous story, watching upon Judea's plains, how the Lord of life adored you, ransomed the fallen nations. Merry, Merry Christmas, Merry, Merry Christmas, joy and pleasure without measure. Merry, Merry Christmas, Merry, Merry Christmas, hail the happy day. Merry, Merry Christmas, Merry, Merry Christmas, joy